Hello all. Today I am the bearer of bad news, as many very powerful weapons have been nerfed in preparation for Season of Opulence. Let's just get right to it. Whisper of the Worm is receiving the nerf that it received in Destiny 1, where ammo is no longer pulled from thin air and is instead pulled from reserves. Capacity has gone back up to 18 shots from 9. Lord of Wolves is getting a nerf and an adjustment. Its PvE damage is going down by a whopping 20%, and the Release the Wolves perk is getting tweaked so that it's a bit easier to control. Instead of it happening automatically on a kill, you'll hold reload like you would do with Borealis or Hardlight to activate the bonus. The PvE damage and range bonuses were removed from Release the Wolves and replaced with a universal damage bonus instead. Sleeper Simulant is also apparently getting hit via reduced ricochet damage on bosses. The precision behavior on the gun is getting changed too. The total damage is unchanged on a precision hit, but non-precision shots will be more forgiving. Finally, Ace of Spades is getting hit via Memento Mori. The buff now ends if you stow the weapon. The PvP damage bonus of Memento Mori was also slightly reduced to stop people from 2-tapping with it active, mainly through the use of One-Eyed Mask. But hey, at least it's up to 6 shots again now, up from 5. Oh wait, sorry, that was just the weapons. Now it's time for armor. Exotic armor that generates super energy on use, Orpheus Rig, Skull of Dire AHAMKARA, and Phoenix Protocol are all getting nerfed. They will now experience diminishing returns, making it harder to get a full super back. Shards of Galanor and Ursa Furiosa are getting their super gain caps reduced to be in parity with the other changes, which I'm taking to mean that all of those exotics will just kind of be pretty equal now, as nerfing Shards and Ursas makes literally no sense at all. The wording could be much clearer on that. GWISIN Vest is also getting hit, going from 15% to 8% energy for killing 1 or 2 players, with scaling of energy staying similar to what it is now when killing 3 or more. Why? Well, I'll tell you. Well, first Bungie's going to tell you, and then I'm going to talk more. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you're looking for complete validation on the feeling of stop nerfing all my powerful exotics, Bungie, then this is not going to be the video for you, because most, if not all of these nerfs make sense, and I will explain why. I already know that I'm not going to be making any friends at all with this video, but I don't care because I'm hanging out with Jez tomorrow and it's going to be a good weekend. Anyway, Bungie expresses a sentiment that I often express when I see the buff other stuff up to their level argument posted. If they, Bungie, keep buffing everything up to the level of these god tier weapons, then, quote, it will be impossible to maintain challenging experiences, end quote, which is 100% true. For what feels like the 1,000,000th time, I'm going to mention power creep. It's bad. I mean, it's not good. If everything was brought up to the power of the exotics that were nerfed, then Bungie would have to continuously outdo themselves in terms of making more powerful weapons to incentivize using them in the first place. That chain would continue forever to the point where any challenge in the game is completely gone. To some of you, that may sound like a dream come true. To Bungie, that's not their goal, and their goals don't always align with ours. Power creep may be part of the reason why Luna's was nerfed, for example. While players often ask and occasionally demand for power fantasies in the game, some of those players often neglect the fact that Bungie wants their game to have a certain level of challenge in it. This is something that a lot of people will probably just never agree with, ever. People want to feel powerful all the time, forever, regardless of what they're doing. I get it. I don't agree, but I get it. The game overall is already pretty easy in PvE. In fact, is there anything in the game right now, besides raids and maybe solo Shattered Throne, that aren't a complete steamroll in PvE right now? Because I don't really think there is, outside of really specific one-off challenges and then maybe super high Nightfall scoring. Like, what will it take for people to feel satisfied with the power fantasy in this game? I really wonder. Strikes, Nightfalls, Flashpoints, Forges, these are all easy activities, and I feel powerful in these almost all of the time, regardless of the loadout that I'm using. But I'm guessing these people may want a power fantasy in the raid. See, that's where it gets difficult, because there are clashing philosophies. Bungie wants the raids to be challenging content. You want to maybe feel a power fantasy in the raid, where it's going to matter. If you're feeling a power fantasy, that means the raid might not be challenging. If you're being challenged, you probably don't feel powerful. The power fantasy in raids isn't a matter of guns or your loadouts, and maybe sometimes it is, but for the most part, raid power fantasy is knowledge. Knowledge of what to do, when, and how to do it better. That's where you get more powerful. But that's not exactly the same as chucking 6 Nova Bombs every minute or unloading 30 Whisper shots. We don't know what the rest of the changes are going to be for Season of Opulence, and for all we know, there could be a ton of buffs coming to other exotics that are just unknown as of now. But if you're gonna nerf the big boys, then the crap stuff needs to get changed to be more useful. This has been shouted from the rooftops relentlessly for I don't know how long, and I agree. There's plenty of stuff out there ripe for buffs. We have way more bad exotic armor than good, as an example. We've had some buffs in the past to underperforming exotics, but we aren't exactly living in a world where something like Kepri's Horn is going to be the top exotic armor piece for Titans, at least in its current form. Some exotics are exotic purely on function alone. Some exotics are exotic because they specialize in something specific and aren't meant to be a god tier item for every condition in the game. In an ideal world, you can make a build around those kind of specialty exotics that could match the top tier stuff, but that's just not the reality we live in right now. People are also upset with what seems like seasonal nerfs, introducing something really fun and strong into the game, letting it sit for a while, and then nerfing it when people think it was not going to get nerfed because it's been in the game for so long. Why would it get nerfed? There's a little merit to that in that it changes up the metagame for things that are too strong. Let's look at Luna's Howl again as an example. But then we just kind of rotate back to the who cares about balance in PvE argument in congruence to the power fantasy argument. Let's start with Whisper of the Worm. Here's what Bungie said. Quote, "An exotic that can generate an infinite amount of heavy ammo is still a gigantic outlier and renders many weapons irrelevant for certain encounters. While exotics are intended to be powerful and novel, bypassing the ammo economy can tend to force us to adjust enemies to compensate. This effectively results in sniper rifles as a whole being punished because of Whisper's unique ammo ability." End quote. The reason I'm annoyed with this nerf, even if it's a reasonable, completely reasonable response to a problem, is that this exact same thing happened in Destiny 1. Literally the exact same thing. So if you knew it was going to be a problem again, why bring it back in the unnerfed state in the first place? We all know that this weapon is insanely good for basically everything in the game. There is rarely a reason to not use it. It is an infinite ammo gun. While it's not the best for every single encounter, it's pretty much top 5 for everything, if not better. However, unlike in Destiny 1, Destiny 2 has a plethora of ways to automatically reload your weapon anyway, making the white nail perk kind of pointless in endgame content and only useful when by yourself. And even still, Titans have Rally and Warlocks have Lunas to assist with that. If there were some sort of damage buff for getting 3 precision shots in a row without an auto reload perk, you can maybe keep some of that potential of the weapon intact, making it a high-risk, high-reward weapon, sort of like what the first nerf was intended to be. I saw a suggestion on Reddit that if you only have 3 shots left and you hit them, you should keep pulling ammo from thin air until you miss, which I thought was an interesting idea. But the exotic factor is now pretty much gone from the gun. I also saw a lot of desire for it to go to the special slot. I agree in that it's now back to being a regular sniper, but disagree because it still has really high damage, and being able to stack it with Darcy or something may prove to be a bit too much. Plus, special ammo is considerably more available than power ammo, and that just might tip it a little too hard onto the strong side. Ultimately, Whisper of the Worm locked up the sniper archetype besides maybe something like Darcy, because infinite ammo is better than non-infinite ammo, and the only way something better than infinite comes along is if you make something more powerful than infinite. power creep. That, and Whisper limits encounter design. Bungie will have to develop every boss fight knowing that teams are capable of busting out Whisper infinite ammo, but if a team doesn't have the gun, then they could be in trouble. Sure, something like Whisper could inspire Bungie to get more creative in terms of encounter design, but I'm sure there's a bit more to it than just get creative, lol. They took a direct approach to the problem instead of just trying to do stuff like, this boss doesn't have a crit spot, or this boss sprints around everywhere, or whatever. But again, I'll loop back to the very first point that I made. Why bring it back in the unnerfed state in the first place, knowing it would be problematic? If it was just a nice surprise or a way for the community to enjoy the gun again for a while, then okay, I guess. Moving on, the sleeper nerf is seemingly coming out of nowhere, reducing the ricochet bonus damage. Sleeper's a good weapon, sure, but it's not really a top tier weapon in current endgame content because getting those shots where you get both a precision shot and then also a full ricochet doesn't really seem that common. The damage on a crit and full ricochet is really high. My guess as to why it was nerfed was a preventative measure in Season of Opulence. I'm guessing that there's something specifically in Season of Opulence's content, whether it's the raid or the 6-man activity or whatever it is, that allowed Sleeper to be abused to such a degree that it needed to be reined in now, as opposed to after everyone discovered the potential for abuse of this weapon. That, or I'm just really out of the loop with Sleeper actually being a Sleeper God tier exotic. Lord of Wolves getting a straight 20% damage nerf is rough, but kind of understandable. This thing allowed for ridiculous damage, well above all shotguns. Taking the data from my previous shotgun damage test video, if I just straight up reduced my results on Lord of Wolves by 20%, it's still better than every legendary shotgun alternative, with only Acreus beating it if you hit perfect Acreus shots every time, and that's only by a little bit. This brings it way more in line with a lot of other guns, but Lord of Wolves is still one of the better options out there for most things in the game. Ace of Spades is a PvP-focused nerf. Ace on PC is a really, really good gun, and the nerfs here seek to rein it in just a little bit so that you can't walk around with a kill clip hand cannon at all times. The nerf to two-tapping people with Ace if you have One-Eyed Mask procced doesn't surprise me at all, considering they adjusted Luna's to also not be able to two-tap. Even with these nerfs, Ace is still going to be really good. I'm not too worried about this one. Finally, we touched on this point very briefly in my Titans are not very good in the endgame video, the super energy generating exotic armor. If you didn't think Skull of Dire AHAMKARA wasn't going to get nerfed, I think you're crazy because it's super potent even on only a couple of enemies, so this is not too much of a surprise. I am surprised that Orpheus is finally getting reined in, but I guess it was only a matter of time. I know high-scored Nightfalls are completely irrelevant, but the strat for quite a while was just stack Night Stalkers for orb generation and free non-stop supers. Non-stop supers are fun, like really fun, but here's what Bungie has to say about that. Quote, "We felt they are increasingly becoming must-pick gear choices. Orb generation from teammates is meant to be the best way to accelerate your super generation. These exotics are allowing players to bypass this teamwork mechanic by generating a large amount of super energy without relying on other players' orbs. Also, because these items are so overwhelmingly strong in situations where players face off against large numbers of enemies, some activities were being designed considering the use of armor such as Orpheus Rigs, Phoenix Protocol, Skull of Dire AHAMKARA, and so on. This means if someone on your fire team doesn't have these exotics equipped, the activity becomes far more difficult." End quote. I imagine trying to design stuff around these exotics being or not being worn gets kind of annoying. Their points are pretty valid. These exotics are very good for those reasons, completely outclassing everything else. Yes, I hear you, internet, buff other stuff up. I know, I get it, and Bungie should hopefully be working on that right now. These exotics just had too much all-around use for how strong they were. It's a lot different compared to an exotic being really good in one specific situation, but not as good in other spots. Overall, while the nerfs make sense in the grand scheme of things, Bungie should absolutely be buffing up a lot of the weaker exotics pretty significantly to compensate. And I do think that Bungie should talk about potential nerfs and buffs they're considering or monitoring a little more often instead of doing these drive-bys. I think that some of these nerfs are focused on Crown of Sorrows, the new raid, and they may be trying to prevent people from completely obliterating the raid with these weapons. Bungie is probably also nerfing these weapons so that they can actually make new weapons that people will be excited about and will also not be left in the dust. I am now worried about Recluse and Outbreak Perfected getting nerfed in the next few months. I originally wasn't, despite the Luna's nerf, but nerfing these big-time weapons at this point just looks like a trend, so don't be too surprised. It sort of feels like the community is a test subject, and the weapons are experiments. It's fun to have crazy weapons, but if the pattern for them is going to be really strong weapon for 6 months, and then nerf, I just don't know if people want to keep going through that. End of the day, I continue to ask that you understand why nerfs are happening. You can be mad at other stuff, I don't care. But hopefully the nerfs actually make sense to you and you can understand why they happen. If you're still with me, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.